Everything starts for all of us, I'll say in our children, with baptism. Because the education, you could say, if you want to put it that way, education starts with Christ sending his Holy Spirit to us and illuminating our souls. So St. Theophan, in the book Path of Salvation, brings out so many different important things in terms of the formation of a Christian soul, or from the standpoint of what we do. First, what Christ does in terms of our baptism, and then what the parents, godparents, teachers, pastors do in terms of the soul. And he talks about, the Greek fathers talked about the different powers of the soul, the intellective power, the appetitive or the desire, and the insensitive power or the will. So we could say the will, the desires and feelings, and then the intellect and thoughts. And from the very beginning, a child's will is educated, because from the very beginning they exert their will. They want something. They let us know that. And a parent and a teacher and an educator has to help to direct the will of the child towards not my will, but thy will be done, towards God. And it doesn't start in the desert when you become a hesychast. It starts in the earliest years in the home and in the school. And it's a very interesting thing how nowadays it's so hard for parents and teachers to say no to children. And I tell the parents, it's good for them when you say no. Now, not if you always saying no. You're just saying no because you're cranky. But there's nothing wrong with telling a child, we're not doing that now, or this is what we're doing. And you could say it in a very positive way. But children, according to St. Theophan, they should ask their parents or those who are in charge first before they do things. They shouldn't just do things on their own. But on the other hand, we have a view nowadays that the independence of the child is really a positive thing. They should just be very independent. Maybe they'll call dad and mom from their first name, and they'll tell dad and mom what they want to do, and that'll be taken as equal consideration to anything else. And it's a very different view. And how will that ever turn out to be? How will the child ever learn? Not my will, but thy will be done. So the development of the will, the strengthening of the will towards doing good, because like a job well done or following something that's true and good oftentimes takes a lot of effort. And we sometimes weaken the will of children by doing things for them all the time, by trying to make it so easy for them, by allowing them to give up. And especially in the type of lifestyle that many people live in now, the children end up with giving up, or one of the things that comes up a lot, a term that's used a lot to supposedly encourage children, is good job. And I want to tell you why I avoid saying good job. Because if everything a child does is a good job, then what really is a job that's well done? If you're just saying good job to anything, they lift up their pencil, good job, they put their books away, good job, things that everybody should do anyway. And we should instead, maybe try to encourage children by saying, that encourage them maybe by sitting down with them and saying, let's do this together. Or if it's not as good as it should be, say, well, that's good for a first draft, but maybe after 2 or 3 drafts, it'll be, really complete. And not to undermine the reality of how much work it takes to do something that's really good. So this, we have to work with the whole idea, the strength of the will of the child, not for them to always get what they want, and yet not to give up when things don't come easy. And the other aspect is desire. developing their appetites. Some people, let's say, for example, feed children all kinds of sweet things or delicate things, and give them all kinds of toys or all kinds of, clothing. I know somebody who grew up with very, very little, didn't have, more than a couple of changes of clothing, and didn't get toys all the time when they grew up because their family was poor. And the benefit, he told me, was that when he got older, he didn't have a concept that he should have all these things. And so he never developed a whole closet full of desires that he had to kind of, he had to get a good job so he could fulfill all his desires for all his toys, and now bigger toys, tools and boats and cars. And he was a little freer because of that. So we have to be careful in terms of the education of our children, not to burden them with desires for things that really aren't essential. And the other aspect is the intellect. And this, in the purest form, has to do with the mind being directed towards God, and what we would call noetic thoughts, or thoughts that are more than just things that are just revolve around this world, or to begin to see the world as an illumination, a light with God, and to see the relationships with things, between things and God. And this is wonderful in terms of, in nature study, the scripture is filled with these type of analogies. Look at the ant, you sluggard, and understand how you're supposed to be diligent, how you're supposed to be laboring. Or the Lord said, behold the lilies of the field, how they neither toil nor spin, and yet they're so beautifully adorned. This is not an accident that the Lord used these to show us, many things about the soul. And you can teach children to see within their surroundings, to see in the beehive, to see in the way that the fox get a thick coat for a winter that hasn't happened yet. Somehow they know, what to expect, and also the bees know because they build up their hive. And also natural people knew. I mean, I've heard stories about Native Americans, or even Abraham Lincoln when he was a young boy and he was out chopping wood all the time, and how he could smell in the air the coming of the weather, and he was so much more attuned to what was happening. This is the whole idea of like what a natural man is like, but to keep the thoughts of children and our own thoughts, seeing the metaphor of God in nature, and to see in people that this is the image of God, to help them see that, somebody maybe they're having a rough time with, to see, yes, he's saying something to you that makes you feel bad, but he's still made in God's image. He's still a child of God. He's still your brother. This is a way of kind of where the intellect is piercing through external problems, forms, and children have to be trained in this regard. And so we too have to have that. A parent can't teach their child something that they don't have. So the whole development of the soul, formation of the soul, is very important in this area. And then in the area also of good literature, good music. If a child is exposed to good music, maybe we don't have the same standard of what good music is, all of us, but I would say, music or culture that makes the soul rise rather than descend, or makes our thoughts and our attention on things that are, more beautiful and delicate rather than on sensual, more sensual things. When they become accustomed to that, then they can compare some other music or other art to what they know, and they can feel the difference and maybe discern. So this is part of the life in the home, in the church, in the school. Also, if in the home there's a life of prayer, then, this is a very important thing. I knew one older woman who came over from Serbia. Her husband was a choir director in the church, and they were very poor. They had a car that was basically 4 wheels and nothing much more. And she said they didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. But they went to church all the time, and on the way home from church, she felt it was her responsibility to talk to the children. What did Father say in his sermon? How could we apply that in our week this week? And she said, time, little by little, slowly, the children, were involved in the life of the church. And she said, now they're choir directors themselves. They're grown up. They're in the church. And she said to me, and that makes me feel really good. And I knew what she meant by that, because this is the job of a mother, a father, to connect their children to the salvation of Jesus Christ.